live in Toronto, not Mars, maybe Mars next, but we're super excited. We have Kathyrn here with us. Tell us a little bit about you, your career, and so glad you're here.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Kathyrn Stager. I'm Compliance Officer and Vice President of Regulatory Quality and New Product Development at SPR. SPR is a MedTech company. We're based in Cleveland, Ohio, and we developed a treatment for pain that uses neurostimulation of peripheral nerves.
And is there anything that would be like really cool to know about you that people might not know?
Definitely nothing cool about me, but one thing that is, surprises people sometimes is that my very first job interview out of grad school was with Maria Bennett, and she's the CEO, founder, and president of SPR. So I've been working with her my entire career, and I just feel like it's been so exciting to see this company start from so little to become something that's really helping patients.
And so tell us about this whole, it's like TMS or just the modality and how it works and what it does. I'd love to know about this this different way to treat.
Yeah. So it's a treatment that's been around for a long time, but a lot of patients are still not aware of it as an option. But it's neurostimulation, so it's delivering low levels of electricity to nerves throughout the body. So that can either be nerves in the spinal cord, which is called spinal cord stimulation. It can be nerves in the periphery, so like extremities, torso, head and neck, and that's called peripheral nerve stimulation.
And it's tell me is there other additional applications? It sounds fascinating.
It is, it's an incredible treatment because there's just, it feels like there's unlimited ways in which there's so much potential for it to be used. So there is a lot of usage for it in pain, but there's also deep brain stimulation is something a lot of people heard of, even like pacemaker technology, you're delivering electrical stimulation to the heart. Some companies are stimulating nerves that innervate the bladder for urinary incontinence. So there's really a ton of ways in which it can be used.
Well, I'm so glad you're here. And Randy,
describe the device to us. How does a patient experience it? What problems it solves?
Yeah, so peripheral nerve stimulation has traditionally been delivered using permanently implanted hardware. And one thing that's different about the device we developed, which is called Sprint, is that there's no permanently implanted hardware. It's a temporary treatment, but it's designed to provide sustained pain relief. So there's a very fine wire lead. It's about the diameter of 2 human hairs. People are always very surprised when they see it in person. And within that extremely fine wire are 21 individual strands of metal and then coated with insulation. So that wire is inserted into the body by a physician using a needle. And it's inserted to within about 1 centimeter of the nerve that's delivering the pain signals to the brain. And it then exits the skin and connects to a pulse generator on the outside of the body. So it's like the size of a matchbox that adheres to the skin. That's where we have the circuitry that actually generates the stimulation.
All right. So is neurostimulation a common treatment for pain? Is this something new or?
It's relatively new. So it was originally discovered about 2,000 years ago. There was a Roman physician who really accidentally discovered that if you put a live torpedo fish on a patient's body who has pain, that area of their body would become numb. And a torpedo fish, it lets off electricity as a defense mechanism. So this physician they were kind of onto something and said, well, what's happening here? And so they actually would put live torpedo fish on patients' bodies to treat pain. And so thankfully, in the last 2,000 years, we've had a lot of innovation in the technology. We no longer use live torpedo fish, but that's really where it started. So it's been around for a long time, but it's really been in the last 10 years or so that the technology has kind of caught up to that treatment. And physicians now have options for how to deliver this treatment in a safe and effective way.
So what's changed in the last 10 years that got you post-fish?
Well, I mean, a lot of the post-fish work was longer ago than that, but I'd say in the last 10 years, there's been developments just across the medical technology industry as a whole that have benefited neurostimulation. So, for example, improvements in wireless power transfer, miniaturization of circuitry. You know, everyone, if it's going to be in your body, you generally want it to be as small as possible. So there's been a lot of work in that area. But for me, I think in the last 10 years or 15 years, the biggest innovation has been on the clinical side of learning that stimulation does not have to be on permanently to get sustained pain relief. So for many, many years, there's been a belief that if stimulation is on, it can provide that therapeutic effect. If it's off, it can't. And we started seeing in clinical studies about 15 years ago that we would deliver temporary treatment and patients would come back months later and say, hey, my pain hasn't come back. And so we stumbled upon that and started doing more and more clinical studies to say, what's going on here? Because if patients can avoid permanent hardware, they certainly want to do that. And we think there's a mechanism going on in which there are actually changes in the brain. So I don't know if you're familiar with like the motor cortex of the brain dedicates different amount of real estate to motor input from different parts of the body. And so someone like a professional piano player or someone who reads Braille, they use their fingertips so much that there's more real estate in their motor cortex dedicated to finger sensation. So it's similar to that, where the brain adapts to the inputs it receives. And so a lot of people with chronic pain, even though the injury is long gone, their brain has become more sensitive to the feeling of pain. And we believe that by delivering these comfortable therapeutic sensations to the brain through the electricity, we're actually kind of desensitizing the brain to pain.
So in layman's terms, it sounds something to me akin to like, I can get the car running, I just need to jump start it the first time, but then run it for 2 minutes and it's back to normal.
Yeah, more than 2 minutes, I think, just to kind of retrain the brain, but it's a similar concept. And part of it too is just, it's not about just relieving the pain, it's about helping patients get back to their lifestyle that they want to live. So a lot of people with pain, they can't exercise, they start to gain weight, they start to have other medical problems. And this is like, it's like stopping that vicious cycle and starting fresh and saying, if we can relieve your pain, think of what you can do to start exercising. And that's another reason why we think the pain relief is sustained, is because people actually start to get active, their muscles get stronger, and that is also providing that healthy input into the brain.
So what's a patient profile that's typical, and what's a physician profile? Like, how does this get to somebody?
Yeah, so the physician profile would be an interventional pain physician.
Okay.
So I think it's a lot of patients don't maybe even realize that there are physicians out there that are specifically focused on pain. And I think a lot of patients think, oh, I don't want to complain about my pain. And I would just say, like, if you're a patient with pain, I mean, it's common, and speak up, because there are options out there. Our biggest market is low back pain. It's, which is no surprise. There's so many people that suffer from back pain. After that, it's shoulder pain, knee pain, so different types of joint pain. And then more recently, we're getting into headache and neck pain.
Interesting. And so, is this an alternative to like an opioid for somebody who has chronic pain?
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing that I think just keeps me passionate about this treatment is that it can help patients get off opioids if they're on them, or even not get on them in the first place. So one thing that's really unique about the Sprint system is that because it's minimally invasive and because it's temporary, it actually could be a logical treatment to use after surgery. Of course, if you have surgery, you're not going to put a permanent implant in someone for their pain. You're going to think, okay, their pain is probably going to go, away naturally. But we've had some smaller clinical studies where we're looking at, can we use neurostimulation directly after surgery and actually prevent that patient from starting opioids? Because if you don't start opioids, you're not going to develop an opioid addiction.
Very interesting. All right. So one last question, just because I know, the whole idea of a medical device is that it needs to be substantially equivalent or better too in terms of how it treats or how it works. Pain's pretty subjective. My wife tells me I'm a wuss, right? Because she's got a very high pain tolerance and I've got a very low pain tolerance.
Right.
So how do you measure more or less pain across different patients and different treatments and different conditions? Like,
Yeah, so there are validated pain surveys out there, and so we use validated surveys. So basically, it'll be something like a scale from 0 to 10, and they actually define what does 0 mean, what does 10 mean, to try to kind of level set how patients respond to that question. But we're also looking at how a specific patient changes their answer over time. So you may call the same pain that your wife has a 10, she might call it an 8, but we're looking at, okay, what's your new
so
score?
it's relative to you as opposed to what's
Yeah.
extreme or light for you.
Right. And the other thing is, we're not interested, as I said, in just pain relief. It's, okay, you're starting to feel pain relief, but how is that impacting your sleep and your mood and your function, your quality of life? I mean, that's really what people want, is to be able to get through a night of sleep and live their lives. And so we also collect data on areas like that, just to see what are those secondary effects to treating the pain.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm hearing like basically the one of the level 0 to 10, but then also the contextual elements, like what areas in your life is it negatively impacting?
Yeah, that's really important.
Yeah.
And some people come to us and they say, you know, I really just want to be able to play with my grandkids.
Yeah.
And that can help the physician too understand how to help that patient get better.
So you're at AdvaMed. What are you here to see? Any gold nuggets you picked up that were interesting?
Yeah, so I attended a session on, I think it was like top 10 compliance challenges right now in MedTech. And I've always been fascinated by compliance, because I feel like, in a way, it's these very complicated regulations, you know, anti-kickback statute with all these carve-outs, and there's these detailed privacy laws, but it really just comes down to putting the patient first. And I mean, when we train our teams, we talk about, if you're that patient, how would you want the physician to be interacting with the device manufacturer? Or how would you want your data to be protected? And so I feel like it's complex, but if you think about it in terms of what's best for the patient, it can really simplify things and make people more comfortable with what the right decision is.
It's interesting. You're the second person to say that. In 2 days, the last person was Don Bobo, was the enterprise vice president for strategy and development at Edwards. So
Okay.
you and Edwards are very aligned.
Okay.
You know? It's
We'll
good.
have to connect. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming out.
Yes. Thanks for having
Have a
me.
great conference.
Yes.
That's
Nice
awesome.
to meet you. Thank you.